Triangle Sword Guild presents the Spada de Filo plays of Antonio Manciolino.
When you're about to fence your opponent with a Spada de Filo, set yourself with the right foot forward in the sword and porta de ferro stretta. Then, without delivering any sort of attack, press your opponent in this manner. Gather forward the left foot, then step forward with your right. Thus provoked, the opponent will see himself compelled to either deliver an attack or retreat. All of Manciolino's Spada de Filo plays start with a rising falso that ends in guardia di faccia. Let's talk structure. Build two lines. The first line from the back foot to the head. This is done by turning the back foot onto the ball and turning the hips and shoulders from profile to face the opponent. The second line will be the line of the arm, which will align with the right shoulder and point just past your opponent's left shoulder. A quick note on the interpretations of the plays. While the actions of the left hand are often left unstated in the descriptions of the plays outside of the Mezzospada sections, I think it's important to keep the left hand active for the interpretation of both a conscious patient and a thorough agent. Antonio Manciolino in his Opera Nova says, "As you are at the stretta of the half-sword with your opponent and you are to be agent, you need to be very quick with your hands. If you are slow and lazy, you will always end up being the patient." As such, we've taken liberty to heed Marazzo and Manciolino's advice that once the swords have crossed at Mezzospada, the left hand comes into play. This isn't limited to Bolognese fencing. It's a feature prevalent throughout Italian fencing well into the 17th century, and therefore, we think that it's incredibly important to developing the interpretations of these plays. If he attacks you with a thrust, hit into it with your false edge and turn a half reverso to his thigh. Then defend yourself by delivering an ascending falso to his sword hand, making sure that you do not pass the guardia di faccia, and deliver another cut ending in porta de ferro stretta. Stringere il nemico, or constrain your opponent with a gathering step into measure, then defend yourself against their thrust with a falso that goes into guardia di faccia and cut a reverso to their thigh that ends in coda lunga stretta, making sure that the left hand comes forward to prevent any potential afterblows. Borrowing from one of Manciolino's later progressions, the patient, to counter this action, will slip their lead foot back and cut a reverso of their own to your sword arm. Notice that the change in measure renders the potential press that we saw in the first progression useless. When the agent sees the opponent's hand turn over and shoulders shift as the patient's foot goes back, they should abandon their reverso to the leg and deliver a rising falso to the opponent's sword hand. This will connect with the pivot point of the reverso and rest its momentum, at which time the agent will turn their hand to guardia di faccia and close the back foot for a structured thrust to the opponent's face. attacks you with a thrust to your face, in order to then strike you with a mandrito or reverso, parry his thrust with a falso. Then, if his mandrito comes to your head, parry it by going into guardia di testa, and respond with a similar blow to his head or leg, as you wish. Here, the patient will initiate a thrust to the face followed by a snappy mandrito to the head. The patient's left hand will go to the inside of the agent's sword hand to cover any potential afterblow, or at the very least force a bigger tempo from the agent. To counter this, the agent will let their sword make a slight turn or falsari type action to gain a line on the opposite or false edge side of the incoming mandrito. From here, all that is required is a half turn of the hand to guardia di testa to beat the opponent's sword away, or to clear enough space to deliver a mandrito that goes to the head and across the opponent's sword arm. Again, letting that back foot close so the cut ends in a structured porta di ferro stretta. Your opponent could also attack you with a reverso or mandrito to the leg. If it is with a mandrito, pull your right foot back and cut his sword hand with a half mandrito. Instead, if he attacks you with a reverso, pull your right foot back while delivering a half reverso to his sword arm. Then recover in porta di ferro stretta. Building off of the previous progression, the patient could attack the forward leg with a mandrito instead of the head, using the same approach of sending the left hand to the inside of the agent's sword hand. The key to reading the difference is the height of the opponent's sword hand as they deliver the mandrito. Having recognized the threat to the leg, the agent will slip their right leg back, voiding the cut and denying the press. Then they'll cut a half mandrito to the inside of the opponent's sword hand. Remember that when it comes to defending cuts to the leg, it's like for like, mandrito for mandrito, reverso for reverso. Previously, the mandrito to the head and the mandrito to the leg featured an outside provocation to attack the inside line. Here, the thrust to the head followed by a reverso to the leg is a high to low attack combination and is best utilized if the agent keeps their point online in their falso. Now, we all know what's coming for the agent's progression. However, you need to be warned that if the patient performs a passing step, the slip won't save you. Of course, if the patient holds their ground as they attack the forward leg with a reverso, then a slip of the lead foot and a reverso to the sword arm should do the trick. You could also push a thrust to strike your head or leg with a reverso. First, let us suppose that the reverso is to the head. Parry the thrust with the false edge without moving your feet. Then, when he delivers the reverso, pass forward with your left foot and parry by performing a mezzovolta of your hand. Then, pass with your right foot toward his left side and deliver a mandrito to his head or leg, as you wish. Finish by letting the left leg follow behind the right. If the agent is disciplined and keeps their point online and their falso that rises to guardia di faccia, then the patient will have leverage to wrench the agent's sword aside, pass to their outside, and perform a reverso to the head that goes below the plane of the agent's sword. If the agent is static in their parry, the patient should have sufficient leverage to collapse their structure or at worst secure an outside elbow press on the agent, which should be game over. Whenever an opponent takes a step to your outside line with an attack or a press, the best possible response is to step forward to their outside with your parry. Here, the left foot pass accompanied by the true edge parry can lead to a thrust, a displacement of the patient's sword hand, and a Manciolino as seen in this progression, or a host of other great options, which we'll get into with the subsequent progressions. If, having performed the parry, you find yourself close enough to wrap the opponent's sword hand, or the cross guard of their sword, you should do so. Once you've gained a sufficient hold or hand hook, rotate the opponent's hand into your pocket and deliver the Manciolino to the head, rotating the back foot to pull your opponent off balance and into your cut. This rotation is nice because it can effectively prevent a countergrapple from the opposition's free hand. Now, once you've made the parry, in the event you find yourself deeper, which is a distinct possibility, because remember, we're stepping into one another here, which means that the measure is going to close rapidly, to the point where you find that you can reach your opponent's elbow, then hook the hand around the elbow, making like a snaking motion. Then step with the right foot as you pull their elbow toward you, and rotate the back foot as you deliver the Manciolino, or a nice slice to the face. Either way, you'll have complete control of your opponent. Let's say that you go for the elbow wrap in the previous play, and you're so deep into your opponent that you can wrap your hand underneath their elbow. Or you go for that elbow wrap and you're too short, but you've reached far enough your hand comes out underneath their wrist. Fear not. Pen the elbow or the wrist, whatever it is you've got, into your side with your elbow and let the point of your sword come around and up to your left hand for a sword and armor thrust to the flank with an accrescimento step to drive the point home. Let us now suppose that his reverso is to your leg. Defend by passing forward with the left foot and turning your point down. Then push a thrust of your own to his flank and immediately retreat by jumping backwards and recovering into Porta de Ferro Stretta. Do you remember the warning about the slip not working if the opponent passes to perform that reverso to the leg? You didn't think your boy Manciolino would leave you hanging, did you? For this play, when the agent makes the parry of the thrust in Guardia di Faccia, the patient is going to start their reverso to the leg, reach for the inside of the agent's sword hand, and in the tempo of these two actions, pass with their left foot to the right side of their opponent, effectively guaranteeing a press and eliminating the slip of the front foot as a viable defensive solution. Going back to the principle from the previous play, because the patient has passed to the outside, the best possible action for the agent is to pass as well. Here, a point down parry in the tempo of the step and a half turn of the hand to codalonga alta once the reverso has been parried, along with a slight press to the opponent's elbow, should be enough to drive the point below their ribcage. If he attacks the upper parts with a mandrito or reverso fendente, or with a thrust, you can parry any of these blows with a falso provided that you do not pass the guardia di faccia. Then, immediately pass forward while turning your hand and push a thrust to the opponent's face or chest, as you prefer. Alternatively, after parrying with the falso, you can let loose a mandrito to his face and let it descend so that it hits his arms and chest. If you choose to deliver this stroke, accompany it with an accrescimento of your right foot. This is among the unique defenses that can be effected in this type of play. If you've watched the previous video on Manciolino's sword and large buckler, or perhaps heard me discuss Stringere of Space on the Le Arte dell'Arme podcast, then you have a framework for why I believe Manciolino initiates all of these plays with a thrust. The next two sequences are what happens when the patient decides to go straight for a cut. When the patient delivers their mandrito to your head, build your structure in guardia di faccia. If your enemy's sword remains in presence, let's say they deliver a mezzo mandrito, or you don't have suitable structure to beat their sword away and the swords bind on one another, immediately perform a mezzovolta of the sword hand and pass forward to the left foot to drive a thrust, letting the left hand come forward to prevent any afterblows. If you do beat their sword with a falso, or if it's out of presence enough that a half turn of the hand won't gain control of their sword, which is usually the case when the opponent delivers a full cut or doesn't cut to guard, then deliver a mandrito to the head that goes across the sword arm. The best way to ensure that this happens is to make sure that the cut from guardia di faccia ends in porta di ferro stretta. This, accompanied with a slight accrescimento of the front foot, will control the sword arm and help prevent any afterblows.